Ms. Ferrer-Butler, we'll turn to you first. Do you have questions for this one? Maybe. All right, let's start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to make these brief because I have a lot, and so please be brief in your answers. I'm going to direct these first couple to Dr. Frost. Have you reviewed the FOIA documents submitted by the committee?
I have not seen that, no.
Okay. So we've heard now for months, and you expressed it in your statement, that the Park Service has worked in earnest to find a solution to the disagreements between these interested parties. Now that it is public that the Park Service has been planning to take over the museum, which was built with private funds, and all of the property held in the museum, which is all private property, either owned or on loan to the trust, do you still stand by the claims of the good faith discussions and negotiations here?
As I understand it, and like I said, I haven't seen the FOIA material, but I think what you're referring to is that in 2010, the City of Vancouver had given notice to the Park Service that it was going to be unable to operate the museum and the facility there in 2016. And so we had begun preparations in advance of that. So it wasn't a takeover, but it was planning in anticipation of what the city had told us was going to happen in the future.
All right. And Mr. Strahan, are you aware that that conversation was a planned event, or were you aware that they were talking about assuming responsibilities that you had?
I was not aware that they were planning on assuming responsibilities. As for the contract with the city, the reason that the city was going to have to terminate, or thought it might, the agreement that was supposed to go till 2025 was because there was a financial requirement that they contribute approximately $75,000 in utilities and maintenance, and they were unable because of city budget to do that. So our organization stepped up and said we would cover the difference, as we have been paying for the museum all along. And at that point, the city said there was no need to cancel the agreement.
Great. Second question again to Dr. Frost. Your testimony states that removing the property from the federal ownership would remove the federal protections. According to the trust, the entire site, including the city-owned Officers Row, where my district office sits, and the West Barracks, not to be confused with the boarded-up East Barracks, is under the Secretary of Interior standard, as the entire site is on the register. Why would the museum be any different, and why would it be removed from those protections if the other city-owned buildings are not?
Well, I'm not an expert on cultural resource law and policy, but I'll give it my best, and we may have to get back with you. But as I understand it, so this is going to be a transfer of title of land out of the hands of the federal government into the hands of a non-governmental organization. And as a result of that, the Park Service could not manage, the federal government couldn't have the same amount of oversight and management of those cultural resources.
So have you ever been to Fort Vancouver?
I have not.
You have not? Okay. So when you look at those boarded up pictures of the historic Army barracks that the Park Service is managing, would you say the Park Service is doing an acceptable job of maintaining the quality and the integrity of the resource as compared with the buildings that the trust manages, that city owned, the property that my office sits on? I can tell you it's in pristine historic condition. We're not even allowed to mess with the flowers, okay? So would you say that in that situation it's best for the Park Service to continue to manage that when at this point we've now lost the educational interpretive services because the Park Service simply doesn't, and we're not even sure has the money to continue to provide them?
Well, I think you just hit the key right there. I think within the resources that we have available for Fort Vancouver National Historic Site, we're doing the best job that we can.
So wouldn't you say at a time like this across the nation when we are struggling, we know you don't have all the resources you need. We know that. Everybody's hurting. At this time, shouldn't we take extraordinary measures to maintain public-private partnerships where there's an active partner that raises money to help facilitate this public resource? Wouldn't you say that this is what we want to preserve and replicate, not just board things up and say, well, my way or the highway?
I would agree with you 100%. But the key is it's not the partnership itself. I think we are fully vested in private-public partnership. It's the scale of the events that the partnership wants to do.
So let me jump in there, because one thing that the Park Service runs every year, I've gone to since I was a kid, is the 4th of July celebration on those grounds. Hundreds of thousands of people have come. I don't think the trust has ever done an event anywhere near that size. I guess I would say that you're kind of comparing. You're not comparing apples to apples here if we're talking about footprint.
I'm not talking about footprint per se. I'm talking about the size and the scale, but also the relationship of the event to why the park was established.
So can I?
All right, there will be another round that you can
Thank
ask
you.
questions.